There's no doubt that these young leaders of today are going to be our leaders of tomorrow. When I first began my Dharma quest, I was in college, and what I felt most of all was genuine curiosity. I wondered, what was this tradition and teaching called Buddhism that I grew up being a part of since I was 3 years old? I was the third of 4 children and the middle of 3 brothers, born to 2 Kibei parents. My mom and dad, both born here but raised in pre-war Hiroshima, and came back prior to the war. We lived, I grew up in post-war San Francisco, and every Sunday morning, Mom made us a very special breakfast, waffles or pancakes or French toast, and I came to realize that I was not alone in this, for I think many of our Nisei, Kibei, and even Issei moms enjoyed extra time to make a special breakfast on Sunday mornings for families. And my wife's mom, she did the same thing, and Patty's family enjoyed Sunday morning breakfast that they called Syrup Sunday. Always something on waffles and pancakes, French toast. And I grew up in the heart of the baby boom era. Our temples and our Japan towns were a cocoon of safety during the 1950s, when being Japanese was still considered to be an enemy alien. After 13 years of attending the San Francisco Buddhist temple, we called it back then Bukkyo-kai. When I was about 16 years or so, I stopped going because I had discovered girls. Every Sunday, Dad would drop us off there, but I would go to Pine Methodist, Hong Kong Kyokai, or Christ United, or, wherever, if there was a girl I was interested going to that particular church, that's where I wanted to be. So, in a way, I kind of stopped going from the time I was 16. But while I was majoring in psychology at Berkeley in the late 60s, I recall a class discussion on aspects of our lives that impact on our personality development. One such dimension was our religious upbringing. It seemed that a significant number of students of that counterculture era of the 1960s were no longer identifying themselves with the traditional religious traditions of their parents. And when asked, most seemed to answer, I'm agnostic, I'm atheist, or I'm not religious. When it came to me, I responded, I'm agnostic. Religion is not that important to me. And weary of these responses, the professor of the class, he said, okay, it's not what religion you feel you are now or not, but what were you raised? And he looked at me and said, what were you raised? And I said, well, I just answered, well, I was raised a Buddhist. Well, this was the time of the late 60s, and I felt as if the entire class just grew suddenly silent. I could feel as if all of their eyes were on me. And during this time, like the Beatles and Donovan and many musical icons of that era were looking to the East for new and intuitively meaningful senses of spirituality. And I felt as if the class spoke as one when one of the students said, wow, cool. You were raised a Buddhist. Well, what's Buddhism all about, huh? And I sat there thinking, I don't know. Right? And I'm thinking, well, let's see, we burn incense, I have these beads, and once I made a wheel out of popsicle sticks. And then we pasted pictures in the books. Remember this? Back then, they would paste pictures of Siddhartha or Shinash. Remember that? Huh? That was standard in all the Sunday schools and activity. So, but I knew that's not what they were asking me. They wanted me to share what's Buddhism all about. And I had no idea. You know, my mom once, we were talking and she was talking about my older brother and older sister, my younger brother, and what they were like when, you know, when they were little. And then I said, well, Mom, what was I like, you know? And she looked at me and she said this. She said, Ma, saikinako datta. Saikinako. So I said, what's that? And she looked up in the Japanese English dictionary she had, and it means you were clever. Huh? She said, you were very clever. So I said, wow, that doesn't seem to be very, very, you know, it didn't seem really special to me. But I think looking back, Mom was pretty right, because I was able to kind of get out of that class in a very clever way. You know? They said, what's Buddhism all about? And then I said, well, how much time left to class? They said, 20 minutes. And I said, 20 minutes? Don't even get me started. Totally insufficient time for me to really talk about what Buddhism is about. So, all right. But class was truly fascinated, and so they said, well, maybe next class period. And the professor said, yeah, if you want, you could talk next class period about. Seems like everyone wants to know. So I said, yeah, sure. So this was Thursday, and I left that class like, whoa. I went to the bookstore, I went to the library, and then I had heard that the San Francisco Buddhist temple where I grew up, across the bay, you know, they had a new young minister. He's 28 years old. His name was Koshin Ogui. So, you know, out of embarrassment, I was, you know, getting books and reading, and then when some things didn't seem to make sense, I went over to, that weekend over to San Francisco, and I talked at length to Ogui Sensei, and I introduced myself, and it made me realize that I had no clue what Buddhism was about. And how could you leave something without really knowing what it is? Huh? So in a way, from very awkward beginnings, my Dharma quest began. And I found that what I came to understand to be the Dharma was something worthy of my genuine consideration. And from that moment, I became even more and more curious. What is Buddhism? And I found my way to a house on Hay Street in Berkeley, the original IBS dormitory that it is now, but back then it was the IBS. There I met Kusada Sensei. We had seminars, Tai Uno, Moksen Miyuki, Venerable Piyananda and Piyadasi, Leo Pruden, Katagiri Roshi. They were intimate gatherings of students, all finding their way to the Dharma path. And over the years, I felt that as if not just the students, but the teachers that I met there were all sincere seekers on the Dharma path. And we were trying to find relevance in our lives and connecting it with the Dharma that we were learning. And I know Reverend Kobata remembers once, we even had a member of the Black Panther Party come to speak to us. It was the second IBS summer session that I met a wonderful teacher that would become my mentor and friend, the late Dr. Moksen Miyuki. He was one of two teachers we had for one whole month, spending every day with them. And I remember within the first day or two of our classes, I asked Miyuki Sensei this question. I asked him, Sensei, what is the goal of Buddhism? What is the goal of Buddhism? Miyuki Sensei didn't say enlightenment or shinjin or selflessness or to let go of attachments. Miyuki Sensei said, the goal of Buddhism is to become a true human being of no rank. The goal is to become a true human being of no rank. And this just resonated immediately, deeply within me. That this is a lifetime goal. Of course, you know, Once you begin to study Buddhism, you know that the Dogen and Dinzai, Chuang-Tzu, many great teachers throughout the history of human spirituality have come to this awareness. But for me, it will always be Miyuki Sensei who was saying this to the young seeker that I was at that time. I've come to feel that no matter what Dharma path we are on, what is most important is that we never lose the heart of being a sincere seeker on the path towards becoming a true human being of no rank. The whole world needs the Dharma now more than ever. But if we are only focused on maintaining the ritual and protocol of tradition, we will never maximize our potential to share the Dharma in America. We will never be a part of creating what Reverend Ron Miyamura said yesterday morning, American Buddhism, not Buddhism in America. I really like that, to see the difference between Buddhism in America and creating an American Buddhism. And if we don't be a part of creating an American, if we aren't a part of creating an American Buddhism, then BCA, with an almost 120-year history here in this country, will continue to shrink as it has for the past 50 years. The world needs the Dharma now more than ever. And there are thousands and thousands of people here in this country hungry for the Dharma. Thousands of sincere seekers are trying to find their way to the Dharma. And we need to become beacons of clarity and truth to illuminate the way. How do we know if something is true? I've come to feel that we know it rings true because it resonates within our hara, within our gut. Intuitively, we know this is worthy of pursuing. Just as when Miyuki Sensei said to me, to become a true human being of no rank. Back in 2001, after 9/11, I received an invitation to participate in a forum of many religions, and we gathered, at this church in Sacramento. I was really curious about this gathering because it wasn't just the standard big 3 or 4 religions. They had about 15 or 16 traditions represented. They were invited to come, Hindus and Sikhs and Sunni Muslims and Greek Orthodox and Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, so many different groups, Reformed Jews, Orthodox Jews. And there were 15, 16 people representing their religious traditions, and we were asked to speak 5 minutes each. And I was sitting in the last 1/3. And you get a group of clerics together, and very few are going to speak just 5 minutes, especially when they're presenting their tradition. So first one stood and spoke, and after about an hour, I said, oh, gee, we're only, down to 1/3 through this group. After an hour and a half, and I'm still looking, there's quite a few people between, getting before it gets to me, and people sitting in the audience, about 200 people, very curious, especially after all that happened with 9/11. As they're sitting there and I could see them becoming impatient, I told myself, okay, I have to simplify Buddhism, make it simple. How can I say it short as possible? Maybe a few sentences, maybe just a paragraph. And then as it came to the 2-hour mark, I started to think, okay, how can I explain Buddhism in 1 sentence? I see if I can explain Buddhism once, because, I was getting tired too. And so when it came to me, and thinking of the most wonderful and essential teaching of non-attachment, I received the microphone and first put the audience at ease and say, I know it's been a long evening, you've heard a lot of speakers, so I'll keep this very short. Once you say that, you have their attention. But you have to be honest. If you ramble, you lose them immediately. So I said, I'll keep this very short. And I could see, sigh of relief. And I said this, 1 sentence. I said, if there is a religious tradition in this world that would say, let's get rid of all religious traditions, start over again, and just be good and kind and decent to each other, that would be Buddhism. Thank you very much. And I got applause. I had over a dozen people coming up to me afterwards saying, so where's your temple? So, yeah, it's amazing, huh? To just simplify it so it resonates right here, where people just can't help but say, yeah. So just before retiring at the end of August last year, as Reverend Marvin mentioned, as many of you know, Patty and I were invited by the Speaker of the California State Assembly to become the Assembly chaplains. And what an honor it was just to be asked. But after about a month of considering this, because I said, well, I have to talk to my boss first. He said, okay. And then he said, well, she's ordained too. Huh? Why don't you do it together? I said, well, I still have to talk to her. And Patty and I talked about this and thought about what is the vision of what we want to try to accomplish with this role. And as we thought about this, we realized this is really an honor, and it would be a delightful challenge. We come 2 or 3 times a week. We are asked to open the floor sessions with a prayer or a blessing, but we open it with what we call a reflection. It's a challenge to share the Dharma without using a single technical Buddhist term or phrase. And if we do use a term or phrase, then we have to clarify it. We have to explain what it means. Essentially, our goal as the chaplains has been no different than it has been for the 32 years we have been with the Sacramental Betsuing. Whatever messages we share, our hope is to make an immediate connection that was clear and sensible. So although now retired, we feel we're taking on a whole new fascinating challenge, and we will continue to represent as best we can, trying to connect with the clarity and sensibility that is the Buddha Dharma. I'd like to, today as we kind of wind down our career, I'd like to thank my many teachers and mentors and countless Zen Jishiki good teacher friends who have helped me to grow through the years, the wonderful supportive members of the Sacramental Betsuing, the leaders there, and especially I'd like to thank the children who are part of the Betsuing over the years. It's the children who have really taught me and asked me, what is Buddhism? And in trying to share the Dharma with them, if they weren't getting it, it's not their fault. And I had to ask myself, well, maybe I don't understand it well enough for them to get it, and to make it simpler and simpler and simpler. So truly, the children of the Betsuing that I've been able to try to teach over the years have become my greatest teachers. And of course, most essentially, I'd like to thank Patty for being so supportive. She said to me once, she said, Bob, you're so weird. That if you didn't marry me, people, would think you're really strange. But because you married me, you seem normal. Yeah, she said those words to me different ways over the years. Well, maybe I should share this since it's not, I have with my YSC kids over the years, but when I asked Patty to marry me, she said, in marriage, will you make me happy? And I looked at her and I said, Patty, in marriage, I promise you only misery. And she looked at me and said, that's terrible. What a terrible thing to say. And I explained to her, Patty, if I promise you happiness, invariably I will fail. And any man who promises a woman happiness is setting himself up for failure. So whereas most men will set themselves up for failure, I set myself up for success. And in our years of marriage together ahead, you know, anything above misery is a plus. And if she ever says, "You make me miserable," I could say, "A promise is a promise." But when I explained that to her, you know, most men set themselves up for failure. I set myself up for success. And it's honest. So. And then she said those 3 little words to me, not for the first or last time, huh? "You're so strange." And so over the years, I've asked her, you know, so why did you marry me anyway, thinking that? And she said, "You know, I have wondered that myself." She said, "But I thought, you know, if I don't marry this guy, I'll always be wondering, what would my life be like, you know, with him? Because he was really weird." But thank you, Patty, for your support over the years. You have truly made me normal. I think she just said she failed. Well, I'd like to close today. Since we are a gathering of the leaders of BCA, I'd like to share a reflection that I used in December when we opened the Electoral College session for the voting of the President of the United States. And it was a rare honor to open the Electoral College session, for it only happens once every 4 years. And so in closing our gathering today, I'd like to share with you what we opened the Electoral College voting session with. In closing, please join me in Gassho. It is interesting that Confucius has said, "One who wishes to be a leader of others should play music for 4 hours a day." It is also said that the historical Buddha would engage in solitary meditation for 4 hours a day. And interestingly, Archbishop Desmond Tutu begins each day with 4 hours of quiet prayer. Whether it is playing music, meditating, or praying, I feel these great spiritual leaders are encouraging the need to engage in calming self-reflection in order to keep themselves centered. If we allow ourselves to listen deeply, in trying to play music, we can hear and reflect on how we feel. It is impossible to play when we are angry or preoccupied. So too is it impossible to meditate or pray when we are upset, distracted, and unfocused. And the greater the responsibilities of leadership, the more there is a need for deep and quiet reflection in each day. Today, our Electoral College members represent us all in voting for the one we feel would best carry one of the greatest responsibilities of leadership. Remembering again the humility it takes to truly lead in the months ahead, let us all embrace our responsibilities of leadership with daily self-reflection, whether it is with music, meditation, or prayer. Self-reflection can help us keep focused and undistracted as we continue to set the bar of leadership high. Namo Amida Butsu. With gratitude and kindness beyond the words. Thank you very much.